Well, at least we've got some signal now and that we can actually see Tingana fairly nicely. And he's taking a really big nap at the moment. He's pretty typical of him these days. He doesn't seem to move around too much. He just likes Chitwa Dam area. Kind of every now and then see him moving away from the dam, but for the most part lies at the dam and then just rests quite a lot of the time on the fringes waiting for things to come near him. Now, where he's lying at the moment is slightly north of the dam itself, and it's a perfect spot actually because you've got a nice cover here where it's not going to mean that, well, it's going to mean that not many things are going to find him, but he can watch all the ongoings of the open area that's basically at his back at the moment. He doesn't seem as though he's too interested in hunting right now, but he can then watch what's kind of happening behind him and see what's going on, and then if he needs to hunt, he can then take it from there. So it's not a worse place to be, and it's probably why he's spending so much time at Chitwa, is that one is he's got water, two, he's got food, three, he's got a situation where he's got a number of females here that have cubs in this particular area, so he's providing some semblance of protection to them, and he's staying out of the way of both quarantine and hukamuri, which means that he can take it pretty easy and have days like this where he can just have kind of bed weather and sleep and not have to worry too much. But he definitely looks better than when a few months ago. He was way worse about 6 weeks ago. He's at least come back from that. He's still not massive, and you can still see he's a little on the skinnier side than what he used to be, but he's not looking as nearly as bad as what he was. There's at least some roundness to that tummy. He's not got his hips sticking out, and his face actually seems a lot more alive and much more Tingana-like than the last time I saw him. He's kind of got this sort of, not as, I don't know what the word is for it, but not as gaunt as what he maybe was a few months or a few weeks ago. So really good to see him, and happy that he's still around and still hanging in there, which is very, very cool. So, Jono, you say this is your favorite big cat. Now, are we saying leopards or Tingana? Because, well, leopards are my favorite big cat, and Tingana is an absolute beautiful example of what a leopard should be, especially when he was in his absolute prime. Tingana was a seriously big boy. A lot of people kind of always spoke about Anderson towards the end, well, in the last few years, but Tingana, make no mistake, was a big leopard and is a big leopard. He's got a massive dewlap, big shoulders, and I've seen him and Anderson side by side, and while Anderson is slightly bigger than him, it's not by much, and so Tingana is still a very impressive specimen of a leopard, and he's done a lot of good for this area. We've had a lot of interesting kind of behavioral things from his tenure as a dominant male, and he's been incredibly sort of tolerant of the young boys. So the Tamba and Hosanna, he's really allowed them to kind of hang around much longer than I thought he would, and that's been pretty cool to see as well. So it's always good to spend time with the old Duke, and like I say, he's looking better, so he's not nearly as frail as what he was kind of looking like a few months ago when he was, you know, kind of walking around and you sort of got this feeling that something really wasn't right with him. At least now he looks as though he's kind of back to semi sort of good health and body condition, and hopefully he's going to be able to catch himself quite a few meals. Now there's a car that's going to join us fairly shortly, and I'm hoping that that will trigger him just to put his head up for a little bit, but probably not. Willie, his hips do look better, don't they? They've got a situation where he's kind of seems as though there's not as much bone showing there. I mean, you can still see that he's a little thin on that side, but it's really a lot better than what we had a few weeks ago when he had that kill on the southern side of Chitwa airstrip. He really didn't look good at all. He kind of was skinny, and he looked as though he was kind of sick in a way, whereas now he looks almost like the Tingana of old. He's kind of, his round self is getting his sausage-like appearance, and his face itself also doesn't look nearly as kind of sad and as narrow as what it was a while ago. But you can see how relaxed he is. It's pretty incredible. He doesn't even bat an eyelid for vehicles when they come in. He kind of just opens his eye, watches them, and then just closes them again. We have to think, I wonder how much time has been spent with a leopard like this in terms of how many hours vehicles have sat with him and kind of just been around him that he's become so kind of blasé with them. Indigo, it might just very well be his retirement home. Although if we look at somebody like Mvula didn't really establish a retirement home anywhere. He kind of moved around all over the show. But maybe Tingana's decided the best way for life is to find a place like Chitwa Dam and just kind of take it easy from there. He's got everything he needs here, so it's not like he has to walk far for food or water, and hanging around in this general vicinity and not having to deal with the big other males that have been moving around is a fairly good thing, I think. I think it's been a perfect situation, and he's been lucky that he's had a place like this where the other males haven't come, that he's been able to kind of recuperate from his condition and to get himself back into a situation where he's, like I say, healthier and probably a lot more capable of defending himself. So, Jono, you say leopards in general are your favorite, and so I can't agree more, Jono. It's the best animal that we have out here, in my opinion. We have, we are blessed to have a lot of incredible species in Africa, but leopards for me are just the epitome of epicness, and so I love spending time with them, as you all know. Now, he also wants to know, John, about the sort of strength of leopards and whether or not they are the strongest pound for pound of the big cats. Definitely here in Africa, they are the strongest pound for pound of the big cats. Even though lions theoretically are much larger and contain a lot more power, if you had to go pound for pound, the leopard's strength is far more than what the lions are. And obviously cheetah are not designed for power at all, and so the lions and leopards are way, way, way stronger than what they are in many aspects. So yes, they are, and it's part of the reason why they're so remarkable is their ability to overcome prey that is so much larger than them. If we take a number of these leopards, they've all displayed the ability to go after very, very large prey. And so you have a situation where, like, let's say somebody like Tamba, who recently killed that kudu cow, that's something that's almost 3 times his weight or more, and that he's able to kill that and wrestle that down is absolutely incredible. And then you look at when these guys take carcasses up a tree, sometimes they're taking their own body weight plus the animal that they've killed, which can sometimes weigh as much as they do, up against gravity with their mouth and shoulders up into a tree is pretty impressive. So amazing cats to follow and to watch, and even when they're sleeping like this, there's still some sort of beauty within them. And he's actually looking very serene today, isn't he? He looks as though he's kind of in max chill mode and not a care in the world. I suppose when you've seen as much as he has, there's not that many things that you have to stress about. For tuna, Tingana is now, well, it's a rough estimate because we don't know 100% for sure. We don't know exactly where he was born, and therefore we don't have the sort of date of birth. But we reckon that he must be about 12 years old. And he moved into this area when he was about, we think, about 5. So we first started to see him in 2012. Yeah, 2012, beginning of 2012, end of 2011, somewhere there. It was where we first started to see him, right on the western side of this northern sector, so close to an area called, well, on Simambili Elephant Plains, on that boundary with Ottawa. That's where he first started to appear. You used to see him on Elephant Plains airstrip every now and then he started to shift slowly but surely east, and is now obviously settled where we are now. So it's been an interesting kind of following him around. So Michael, who's posted on Twitter, thank you, Michael Fleetwood, you say that I posted a photo in 2011, which was the first photos posted of Tingana, and yeah, late 2011, so end of 2011, it's about right. I remember actually some of the sightings we had of him. He was impossible when we first started to see him. You would get within 100 meters and you'd just start running, and he would not let you anywhere near him. It's pretty crazy to think he's kind of the way he is now, but he used to be really difficult to find. And I remember, like I say, the first time that I saw him was actually on Elephant Plains airstrip, so it was a sighting at night, and he was the skittish male that was found, and we kind of got there, and he was just on the edge of an airstrip stalking warthogs, and then he just settled down in the grass. And I think because it was so open, he had nowhere that he could really run to, so he actually just sat there kind of watching us. And as soon as we turned off our light, he just bolted for the thickets, and that was the end of the sighting. We didn't see him anymore. And then we started to see him a little bit more, kind of coming towards a place called Big Dam on Arethusa Privates, and I had the most epic sighting of him at Big Dam, like walking along the edge. Well, maybe it's Tingana's gotten into the point where he looks as though he's completely passed out and found himself a nice little pillow in the form of a log. And so watching him has been kind of, you do get into that point where you start to kind of feel like you might be a bit nappy yourself. So you kind of get a little bit drowsy and your eyes get a little heavy while you watch, especially a leopard like this, when he's as comfortable as he is. And you can see he's got himself into the most perfect spot just to relax and keep himself as chilled as possible. So I don't think we're going to see much more from Tingana today. I don't think we're going to see him actually moving around too much now. The weather conditions, though, could mean that by this afternoon he's moved from where he is, although so far what we've seen of Tingana over the last few months is that he's pretty chilled and stays in a very similar spot through the course of the day, and then moves around a bit at night and does his hunting around sunset. So I wonder if maybe that's what he's going to do, is just bide his time sitting in these thickets, and then when we have a situation where waterbuck and impalas and those kind of things come onto the open areas during the course of the night and transition through these thickets, that he might then start hunting them at that stage. That's what I think is going to happen. But his legs are stretched out, his head is on a little branch, and so I think he's ready for a good long day nap. So Jared's buddy, Tingana, Thandi, and Shadow are of all very similar age, yes. So it's interesting because we've gone through this major kind of change in the leopards' dynamics in the last year. If you think of Karula, and Shongile and all these kind of things that have happened. But we tend to forget very quickly that we've got an aging leopard population as well. So our sort of most viewed leopards that we've had over the course of the last few years have pretty much, some of them have disappeared, unfortunately, in the form of Karula and Salahesh. And then, you've now got a situation where Tingana and Thandi and Shadow are starting to age. Tingana is a lot closer to the end of his kind of lifespan than Thandi and Shadow, given that Thandi and Shadow, the females normally live slightly longer, and you can get females that will go a little bit sort of older. And if you look at Thandi's grandmother, Safari, she survived all the way up until 19 years, so that's a long time from now. But they are starting to get a little bit older, and so we've got this different aging population within the area. And so it's nice to have females like Kuchava around, Sibui. These are younger, in Shadulu. These are all three are young individuals and will probably form the backbone of our leopards going forward. So those are going to be leopards that we're going to see a lot more of, and they're going to hopefully supply this area with a lot more females that will eventually grow up and become like Thandi and Shadow that we follow for 12 years. But they are starting to get a little older, unfortunately, and it's crazy to me to think that Thandi is as old as she is, because when I first started here, she had just had her first litter. She had her first litter when I first came up into the Northern Sabi Sands, and she was a young female that wasn't even into her prime just yet. And now to think that she's an aging female makes me feel a little bit old. What's wrong, boy? Is that branch in the wrong place? Yeah, the branch was in the wrong place, so now he's just rolled over so that his head doesn't have to lie on the branch. It was obviously not feeling that comfortable, so he's just flopped over. So Haley, no, he can still mate, and probably will still try and mate. It's just that he's getting older, which means that competing with these younger individuals like Quarantine and Hukamuri is difficult for him. They are fit and young, and they are confrontational. They want to take territory, whereas he, on the other hand, his body is starting to slowly but surely break down. It's not because he's sick or anything like that. It's just a natural process as we get older. So it becomes harder and harder to move around, harder to hunt, harder to defend territory. And so it's not that he can't mate and won't mate. If we look at Mvula, for example, Mvula mated when he was... Boy, what is going on? Are you not winning with that branch? It seems as though this branch is really giving him a tough time. But while he's got his head up, I just want to try and see if we can maybe get into a different position that we can actually see his face and move. But he will mate if he gets a chance. Like I was saying, Mvula mated when he was a little bit... when he was a nomadic male with Shaluvan, so he will still mate and if he can, but it's just that he's not patrolling as much of a territory, and so if he does mate, it's going to have to be with a female that's very, very close. The problem that he has is that all of his females that he kind of looks after at the moment are pregnant. So, if you look at Tandi, Kuchava, Shadow, even... I suppose Inkanyeni at one point was a female that he mated with, although he hasn't kind of been that way for a long time. But they've all got not really too many individuals that he can actually mate with at the moment. And so the time that he's got left, I don't know if those females all successfully raise their cubs, whether or not he's going to get an opportunity to mate. Are you hiding from us, Tingana? But you haven't chosen a very good stick to hide behind. Shame. I think this stick is really irritating him because it's kind of lying right across where he wants to lie. Now he's trying to tuck his head behind the stick, not on it, to try and sort of get some semblance of comfort. But it doesn't look very comfortable at all. He's kind of got his head pushing up against it, and I'm pretty sure that he's going to move at some point. I don't think he's going to stay that way for too long. So Bitcoin Ninja, who I believe has joined us for the first time today, and you've asked your first question. Congratulations and welcome to the addiction. And you want to know if we supplement the diet of these animals. No, we don't. So all of this is completely wild. If these animals find food, they find food. If they don't, they don't. And so we have had very unfortunate experiences of watching animals basically wasting away from battling to find food, and examples of that are an older male leopard that I was talking about just now called Mvula, and he unfortunately in the last little bit has gotten skinnier and skinnier and skinnier, and we think unfortunately has passed away from it. So because it's 100% wild and a natural system, we have a situation where we don't get involved at all. There is things where animals are going to get older, they're going to be sick or injured, and they are going to pass away, and that means that they provide nutrients for not only the certain other animals but also into the ground, and that then promotes growth of grasses, which then feeds prey animals, which then feeds predators, and so on. So it's important that we don't interfere too much. It's a situation where these animals have survived for many, many years, and they have a very fine balance that they all kind of fit together, and when you start tinkering with that, then you start to change the outcome of what's going on. And if you, let's say, hypothetically keep a male leopard like Tingana alive for much longer, he might then kill the cubs of a newer male that's in the area, and so the knock-on effects of that to feed an animal is really quite massive. And at the end of the day, you then make that animal reliant on people, which makes him a lot more dangerous when they do get older, as they might then start to try and attack people because they're not getting the food that they need. Good. Now, Tingana, I don't know how much he's going to get up to. We'll probably sit with him a little longer to see what he does. I want to just maybe pop down towards the dam just now. But while we do that, let's send you back across to Brent and find out how far that elephant has gone and whether or not he's still on the trail of it and has maybe... Well, Taylor, you do bring it on yourself, and so watching Taylor struggling with that buffalo thorn this morning was very entertaining, and Brent and I both sat there thoroughly enjoying ourselves watching what was going on, as well as most of the cameramen. You can see Tingana's not listening at all to anything that we're saying. He's found himself a good spot now, away from the stick that is comfortable, and so he's having a good nap. But I'll show you the video of Taylor being stuck this morning. It was a situation where she kind of got herself, Nifal started to alarm call, and so just in the distance on the top right of where Tingana is sitting in a dead tree, straight in there on top you can see a bird of prey that landed very, very close to this area. I thought maybe, just maybe, we were going to get lucky and Hosanna was going to be around, but instead it is a tawny eagle that has landed up on that dead tree, and so that's why the guinea fowls have been alarm calling, is because of this bird of prey that's been out in the open. The other interesting bird that we had come past while we were sitting here is a African harrier hawk, or Djuma, but a young one, a very, very young chick that kind of flew. It must have just fledged from the nest, and it was calling constantly, and they do that when they first leave the nest. Excuse me, I had to sneeze there. There's all these grass seeds around, and so they call a lot when they leave the nest for the adults to come and feed them. Thank you very much, Nikki. So Nikki just said bless you to me, so thank you, Nix. And so they call a lot for the adults to come and bring them food. And so I wonder, we had that Djuma nest, or African harrier hawk nest, on Chitwa, that we never really actually saw the adults on the nest, besides the one time I went to Chitwa between the drives. I went to go and see Stefan, who was managing Chitwa at that stage, and the birds were on the nest, and I wonder if it's not that same chick that is now fledged and is actually flying about at Chitwa open area. It's, like I say, a very young bird still. It doesn't have any of its grey coloration whatsoever. It's still very brown, and lots of talking as it was sitting about, and very cool to see. So hopefully we'll see more of it around Chitwa as we go. But what I think we're going to do, is Tingana, did you just move? That's a surprise. I didn't expect you to move. He's busy licking his chops a little bit. As you can see, I think he got a little itch on his shoulder that he just groomed off quickly and had a little bit of a kind of, and your eye is open as well. That's amazing. He's actually moving. Karen, you're asking what would happen if a lion walked past him. Well, probably if he didn't see the lion coming, he would try and go as low as possible to try and stay hidden and just try and keep camouflage. But if a lion spotted him, he would run for his life and try and find a tree and get up into a tree as quick as possible. Are you now going to mow the lawn, Tingana? Yes, Tingana's now decided it's time for some grass. You'll find cats doing this every now and then. And there he goes walking off. So he could do with a meal, but he's not looking bad at all. He's looking much better than the last time I saw him, that's for sure. But he's now mowing the lawn. Got to keep his area clean. You know, Chitwa Dam has got a pristine appearance, and when you're living in the fancy retirement home, you need to make sure that you've got a mowed lawn in front of you. So he's just doing his bit. Since the buffalo haven't been around for a few days, he's got to kind of make sure that the growth from the rain is just trimmed off. But nice that he's up. I don't know how all of a sudden he just got up and started walking, so I'm not sure what his next move is going to be. It'll be interesting to see. And yes, exactly, Nikki, he heard that we were going to leave, and that's why he decided to kind of move us off, and to start moving so that we would follow him around. Jason, how far can a leopard hear? Ooh, I don't know. I think it depends maybe on the leopard. Maybe it's like us, where some people hear better than others and are able to pick up sounds better. But, I mean, the answer to that is probably a lot further than we would ever know. And they pick up little rustles in the grass that we don't hear. They pick up vocalizing of other leopards or lions far from where we do. And so their hearing must be pretty good. It also depends on the sound that is made. So, you know, if we talking different sounds, will have different wavelengths, which will carry different distances. And so something like a lion's roar as opposed to a mouse squeaking is two very different sounds, and what they can hear, or how they can hear those and where they can hear them, is also going to be very different. So I think it depends on terrain, humidity and air temperature. You'll probably find if there's cloud cover or not, if there is a situation where there is a lot of density of bush, as well as then what animal is actually making the sound will dictate how far they're going to be hearing it. So they have very, very sensitive hearing, but it just will depend on kind of what's making the noise and where, and all the surrounding terrain that dictates what goes on. Right, so let's just reposition ourselves so we can actually see him now that he's kind of tucked himself behind a bit of a bush that he's busy feeding on. So Tad 2012, you say he looks a bit stiff. Well, I suppose it does look a little bit. Maybe he's getting older, and so there will be stiffness that creeps in every now and then. But you'll probably find if he just walks a little bit, maybe a few kind of meters, that stiffness will go. Oh, bless you. You see, that's what happens when you eat grass, Tingana, is that you get the seeds up your nose and then you start sneezing. I know because we've been mowing down grass as we off-road lately, and the seeds come flying off and hit you in the face, and then you start sneezing and hay fever starts, and so you shouldn't really kind of be in the grass at the moment. Maybe it would be better for him to be lounging on a road or a termite mound somewhere. I'm not sure he knows what he actually wants to do with himself at the moment. He's kind of grazing and moving about, but just looks up every now and then and kind of just checks around. And so I wonder if he's going to find himself another spot to lie down. Looks like it. Yes, there we go. And down he goes. So that didn't last very long. Just decided to top up with some grass before he settled in again for the rest of the day. We're going to just go down towards Chitwa Dam and go and see what's happening there. We'll come back past Tingana just now, and while we do that, let's head you back across to Taylor, who I think has found those elephants that she was looking for. Throw it to Taylor and Brent, and they can kind of come up with more what they think as well. I know that Brent will go with, these hectic names like Vlad and Boris the Blade and Vlad the Impaler. Those are all Brent names. So he might have something quite entertaining for Snappy's counterparts so that we know what they are. But like I say, Tingana is still fast asleep. He's in exactly the same place that we left him. In fact, he has not moved at all since we last saw him, and so I think we'll just carry on. I just wanted to come pop in and just see how he's doing, and if he was at least had his head up. But you can see he's very, very sleepy, and so we'll leave him for this afternoon and come back to him a little bit later and see if he's maybe going to be hunting that little baby waterbuck this evening. I'm sure it will be Brent and Taylor. Now, I believe